but I'll throw a spreadsheet up there and I can see.
A lot less debate about things.
Because it's so big.
It's less subjective.
Yeah. And I forgot mine.
Well, see, there you go. I had to fill it from something else besides the.
Well, you know, there's a,
refiller.
did you go into the break room? Because there's a special water filter in there.
Oh wait, that's what I thought you were talking about, the wooden one. Or the black one.
Oh, there's one in the hallway.
One in the hallway.
Oh, I've never seen the one in the hallway. I used the one in the break room.
Those are great. But the, it's like you find at the airport.
Yeah, the one in the break room is black, and it's the best filter.
Yeah. Yeah, oxygen.
I missed you. I think it's criminal they don't have those every year. So I was there, and I bet it's probably because the shop had one.
Oh yeah, they want to sell you.
And I was like,
Well, because what you
we're
did,
not
my
going to make it on
daughter's
time
story,
or at all.
dumps
I'm just
the
going to
water,
go.
goes through security,
We'll do
gets
the
in.
merchant one downtown. We did that one.
Took through.
By 11, Ray can have contact. The merchants that went. They did it at 11. They don't do it.
Okay, I'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. I'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. Thank you all for being here tonight. We have several items that we want to try to get through and have a chance for everyone that wants to speak on. We will start, first of all, with the special call meeting. Today is Monday, April 18th, and the time is 6:30. And Tracy, if you would come up, council, I'd like to forego the preliminaries and go right into the meeting, if you're okay with that.
Ready? It's a public hearing, right?
Yes.
If you could actually scroll down to packet page 9, I think that's the clearest visual that we have, make it easier to understand. This is COA 2022-011 at 127 South Peachtree. You probably know it more formally as the South End development. There are 3 buildings there: front building A, building B, and building C. Building B is the topic of conversation tonight. And you see this green line here denotes where our historic district ends, and then outside the historic district beyond that. So what we would consider an economic development project, the site is going through a rehabilitation, and western addition to building B actually goes right into the local historic district, and the rest of the rear of the site is not in the historic district. And part of their revamping of this site includes taking down those 2 additions to building B. Building B was built in 1950, and the additions came in after that. We have no true date other than they came after 1950. And part of the economic development increase to this site would be including taking down those darker shaded additions to building B. And the subject of your hearing tonight is taking down that front addition for the redevelopment of the site and a possible future pedestrian connection of Skin Alley to and through the site. It's already been to the Historic Preservation Commission, and they found no real need to keep that building, especially since it couldn't be dated, and it's a very obvious addition to the site. And they've recommended that you consider approving the historic demolition for that addition tonight. We do have some representatives here representing the application, I believe. Trey, maybe, is going to be here representing the application, and he can talk a little more to their project as part of this public hearing for you, if you'd like.
Thank you for that presentation, Tracy. Before we open it up for public discussion, unless you have to, unless you want to,
I think everyone is pretty.
if you would, just give your name and your address.
Hey, I'm Trey Weatherly. I'm owner's representation for Western Atlantic Development of 127 South Peachtree. I think everyone's pretty familiar with the site and everything that we're working on down there. Happy to answer any questions as we go through the process. I have Leslie Ellsworth, the architect, here as well to speak to the design side. I mainly represent the schedule and the owner as fact this evening, so I can answer pretty much any question on that side. But again, thank you for having us tonight, and thank you for your consideration. We're really looking forward to opening it up as a pedestrian corridor in the near future and building something great for the city of Norcross.
Thanks so much, Trey. At this point, we will open the floor for any questions from the audience that are here today. Having heard none, let's move the conversation back to council. Council, do you have any questions relative to the question of historic demolition? Excuse me, demolition. Not the project in general, but the topic of historic demolition. I think that's where we are tonight. Councilmember Gaynor.
The only question I have is, what does this do to building B on that diagram? Does it, it's attached to building B, so how does it?
If
how does
you're
it
going to
impact?
respond, please come to the
Yeah.
podium.
Hi, I'm Leslie Ellsworth. I'm the architect on this. So it's basically exposing the original historic structure. They're two, structurally speaking, they're two completely separate elements. So we would be removing this addition and exposing the previous exterior structural load-bearing wall.
That is a load-bearing wall. It's not in danger of collapsing the building.
No.
Okay, that was my main concern. Thanks.
Any other questions, council?
Yeah, why today? Why are we having a special call meeting on this?
Yes, Tracy, you want to elaborate on that a little bit?
It is an economic development consideration, which does allow us to consider moving the application forward. And so after consultation with the city manager and economic development, as well as consultation with the mayor, we decided that this would be the route that we would take after it met its statutory obligation with the Historic Preservation Commission last month. But it has been appropriately advertised to have action today.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and I realize we meet the legal definition. I've been I've had questions asked of me for 2 years of residents with no answer from the owner's representation. I've had prospects that wanted to put into this with no answer for 2 years, and now the citizens get 5 minutes to look at this. It's a little odd to me that we are jumping through hoops for a project that's been in the works for 2 years, and now we're supposed to meet on their schedule as opposed to going through with what our process is, which will be to discuss it tonight and vote it on in 2 weeks. So, Eric, can you kind of elaborate what the economic advantage would be for the citizens to not or to forego our established process?
It's difficult in that context.
Well, that's what.
Yeah.
Can the applicant speak to that?
Sure, I'm happy to speak to it. Essentially, we're trying to meet the schedule of the front two buildings. Here, Building A, and Building B is a consequence of Building A. Building A is going to be 2 individuals, the Refuge Coffee as well as Butter and Cream. My job is to move the project forward expeditiously and as expeditiously as possible. Therefore, trying to activate the site, remove Building B, and give pedestrian access eventually to bring pedestrians into the site and connect downtown is one of the things that we really want to do to basically activate the entire site.
Yeah, I'm 100% aware of that. Was one of my ideas to Mason. Do you have the easement through the adjacent property next door yet?
Not yet.
Okay.
It's just one more step in getting the boxes checked and working with Carol Lee, and Mason's been leading up that charge and working with everybody.
Is Carol Lee here? She might be here for the parking issue. Okay. Okay. Second question. This might be more of a staff issue. Looks like you applied for this back in February. Did we move this through as fast as we would have liked to, or was it just kind of our deadlines that we?
Right, you have 30-day, you have to do advertisements to get
Okay.
it before the HPC. So there was a window to get it to HPC, and it's been there,
Okay.
and it fell into our regular cycle.
To your economic development question, I think you know that we've been looking at the potential for the extension of Skin Alley, and so it ties into that opportunity to see property you just mentioned to be able to provide that access.
To be quite honest with you, being that the way that the historic district was drawn, this is one of those scenarios where, just because the line got drawn in between the building is what made it more complicated. This is not a historic structure. This is not a historic structure. Building B is, and we want to maintain that and maintain the character of that building. That's one of the things we're working really hard to do. This building just got wrapped up in it. And that's kind of why we're here, is to cross that bridge and move on with it and say, that's just old.
That doesn't really answer my question about why we're meeting early to do it, as opposed to going through our normal process. I'm hard pressed to find an economic development answer to that. So I don't have a problem with the project. In fact, I'm one of the only people on council still that, when we started talking about this, almost 4 years ago. So I think it's a great opportunity. I'm just a little concerned that we're pushing something through after maybe probably COVID-related wait, but a long wait.
I believe that the reason it was getting pushed through was to remove this building and start activating screen.
You can remove that building without HBC approval, though.
It's tied together, so we can't.
Oh, because it's okay. So once we remove that, we'll just tear down the other one. Okay.
That's right. And so, in all reality, the HPC building just got tied up in it. It was not even the intention to tear it down tomorrow. This building, we're trying to remove immediately.
Is that the metal building?
Yes.
Okay. Well, none of my colleagues have any problem with it. I have no problem moving forward with it. It's just, I'm not a big fan of dumping stuff on us, the day before. And
The merits of the case are pretty clear. I think the process could have been done a little better. I think we could have gone in regular order. I don't see anything that insisted on a timely need for this. So I'm sensitive to what Councilman Hickson's saying. I think the merits are absolutely clear, but maybe we could pay attention to the regular order if we can.
Are we sure that all due diligence was covered?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I'm sorry, we've closed the comment. I will
Whatever you want me to do.
I will allow a question.
Yeah, went quick. I didn't get a chance to get my hand up, but I just have to say, being
If
a
you would
10
come to the podium.
Sure, thank
and
you,
give
sorry. So, being a 26-year-long business owner at 109 South Peach Street, oops, didn't mean to mess you up
Can
there.
you use the microphone, please? That's why I want you to go up there. Thank you.
But I do want to point out, this is inaccurate. So I'm at 109 South Peach Street. You left off 113 South Peach Street, which is my neighbor property. So this is Antique Traditions. Y'all have me drawn as this double property here. Here is, I cut off basically here, but I do go back to Carol Lee's driveway. And then here is the B&W property. So they're not, I don't know if they, I don't know if 113 is supposed to be included, but 109 and 113 seem to be merged. And I just feel like your rendering is not accurate.
were they properly notified of this process then? I'm sure they were.
Yes.
So who drew this?
My team did. We can put 113 number on there.
It just is not quite as accurate as it could be, and I feel like for transparency,
Yeah.
that would
well,
be great. I'm not against it, but I just feel like it's not accurate, and later someone might come through and think that this was a mistake.
But
Yeah,
they
we went off of, I'm sorry.
No, that's fine, and those corrections can be certainly made.
Okay.
So it's just a.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's just a graphical error.
Well, I mean, it matters.
Any other questions, council? This has been an ongoing project for, I guess, over 2 years, and I think we've all been kind of urged by our citizens to see something happen in this quarter, this section of the city for quite a while. I know it's really come a long way. I'm glad to see it move forward, and I hope we all are. We'd love to see something on that south end. Tracy, any additional things to add?
No.
you so much for bringing this forward. Any other questions, council? Chair will entertain a motion at this time.
Motion to. Taking a vote on this right now?
Yes, this is a public hearing. It's for the demolition of
Okay,
the building
motion
addition.
to move forward with the demolition of the building as described in the drawing.
Have a motion by Councilmember Beckles. Do we have a second?
I have a second, just for a question.
Second for a question.
Is how involved is the DDA in this project? Are you allowed to vote on this?
Are we allowed to vote on the historic demolition?
As a DDA member, is there a financial interest in your board? I mean, I just don't want you to get in trouble.
We loaned them $125,000 for this project. They have not used any of that money, but we loaned
Is there
them
any
$125,000.
conflict, Pat, before we raise our hands?
It wasn't a personal loan, it was a,
No.
it was
Right,
the
no, it
DDA,
wasn't-
so
it
I
wasn't
think that
mine.
would be your conflict. I didn't go to law school.
Did they all chip in? You said we.
Make that clear.
I think we're safe.
DDA
Right.
loan, not the council, DDA. Okay. It's been motioned and second. Now we'll have a call for additional questions. Council.
The OCD part of me would just love if the actual motion was read. I'm sorry,
Okay,
you were close, but
wasn't that close, okay. I'll go. A motion to approve the attached request for historic demolition as outlined in the attached application and staff report. Thank you, sir.
We have a clarification of the motion. Any objection from the council on that clarification?
Pretty exact.
Having heard none. And any additional questions? Having heard none. All in favor, let it be known by raising your right hand, saying aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Thank you, council. Now, it is time to move into our regular policy session. Let me just remind us, we're going to limit comments to, it was suggested by council today, 3 minutes. If any, we're going to open it up for additional comments from our citizens at this time. For any issues or comments or concerns that you may have that you want to bring to the council that's not related to the previous issue. Or if you want to touch on the previous issue, we'll allow that too. But come to the podium at this time. Having heard none, we will move to board updates. Architectural Review Board, Jeff Hopper. Thank you for being here tonight.
I got to do it by Zoom these last 2 years. Okay. For those of you who don't know, my name is Jeff Hopper, and I'm the chair of the Architectural Review Board. And gosh, I don't even know how long I've been the chair. It's been over 10 years. And I think that given all the development in Norcross over these last few years, I think we've done a pretty decent job of holding developers' feet to the fire. And so that said, we'll just delve into some of the examples here. This came right off of the website in terms of what our responsibilities are. Lots of new homes, and so over the last couple of years, lots of applications. It was not uncommon to have 10 applications at a meeting, and so it seems to be slowing down a little bit, but I don't know if that's a pause or what. Maybe we're just running out of places to develop. I don't know. Members, our newest members, Linda, MD, and Naeem Harrison, coming along really well. Cindy Flynn, been around probably as long as I have. She, I appreciate y'all renewing her. You know, she's pretty integral right now at this point of the board. And so what I thought I'd do is I would just kind of segue into a recent, what I'll call success. Developers generally come to the table with the bare minimum, trying to get away with it, and I think that, and that's not a knock against developers. Generally speaking, once they kind of figure out what you're looking for and what your expectations are for the community, they usually fall right into line. But like any other business people, they're trying to see what they can get away with, and as a business owner, I can somewhat appreciate that. I'm going to focus on Autry Street. On the other side of Rossi Brundridge Park, there's 4 homes going up right now. There's 2 more going to be going up. We just approved another one, and I believe, I'm not sure, I think there's another one maybe tomorrow night. We got another house, but basically this particular builder came to us with 4 houses all at once. This process took about 3 meetings, maybe 4, because we had to, we had to kind of adjust expectations, if you will. And so, in this particular one here, this is the one closest to Brundridge Park, Rossi Brundridge Park. There wasn't a whole, we liked it. We made a few minor modifications. We still tabled this particular house, and I'll show you why in a minute. But this one right here, I like a lot, and I think it really is. It's one of my favorite ones. But basically, this is kind of typical what you get from a developer. They'll come to the table with something like this, the proposed, and if you're going to build in Norcross, you're going to have a chimney that goes all the way down to the ground. You're going to have, if indeed you have a chimney, you're going to have a water table, and if you look, we extended out that porch. And of course, we want a frame around the windows, and we don't want just blank windows. And so that's kind of just to give you an example of what we do. This was the other side, same thing. You can notice the difference. And of course, the back of the house. We don't mind if the windows don't have mullions on the back of the property, just simply because it can't be seen from the right of way. And then this is what it looks like this morning. This house got approved the first go around. It was a decent design. We approved it. We approved it with a ton of conditions, and we've kind of evolved to the point now where you just got to have your drawings. The days we used to be a lot more accommodating. People come in with tracings. You got to come with your CAD drawings. You got to be ready to go with, it's only fair for staff. Staff can't enforce these things unless they have concrete, definitive directions. When you approve a project and you have 25 conditions, I mean, it's going to be tough. It's tough on staff, and stuff's going to fall through the cracks. That said, we approved it with these conditions, and generally speaking, we approve a project with conditions. I'll ask to see the drawings when they're submitted, just to make sure that they abide by it. But again, you can see the difference. The builder would build that. If there wasn't an architectural review board, that would have been built. Instead they built this. Same thing with the other. What is this? The right elevation. And then of course the back of the house. You can just stark, the difference. And then of course this is what it looks like today. And this one here, and if you notice, a lot of these houses were looking the same, and the builder kind of bowed up a little bit. Oh, we build this all the time. People love it, And we said, well, we're not. If you're going to build in Norcross, you got to up your game. And so they came back later, a couple meetings later, with the approved one. And again, you can see the difference. Again, it's stark, water table, extended porch. We want architectural detail. Everybody kind of gets a little fidgety, but it's my understanding these houses are going to sell for what, $700,000. They can afford to do that. Again, the right side elevation, the back, and then this is what it looks like today.
What color is that?
Yeah, I think the builder and the resident in the city are working through that one.
I'm colorblind. You're not gonna tell that.
It stands out. I think the intent, Tracy, was for it to be a little bit lighter.
It was supposed to be blue, not very much.
Yeah. I mean, even, if the homeowner said, this is what I want, I'd give them the pass. I mean, that's what it's ultimately the homeowners say. And, people will say to me, oh, why did you approve this style house? And the simple answer is, that's what the owner wanted. I mean, it's, you take what they want to do and kind of make sure that you know, it conforms to community standards. All right, and then of course, this is the last house here, same thing, we just made them, you know, we tabled, again, it looks just like the other ones, tabled that one, and just, you know, they came back with this, with the approved, again, elevations, boom, again, it's stark, I mean, this is what we do, we're trying to make sure that, and there it is today. And so that's a real recent success. I drove through Pinnacle Park, and that's Pinnacle Walk. You know, when we did that one, and I mean, staff kind of bears a lot of the credit for this. I mean, the developer said, "I've never been to a meeting like this." I mean, this guy develops stuff. It wasn't his first time. He's like, "I've never had to do anything like this," and I don't think he didn't really say it with animosity. I mean, I think he got it. But basically, you know, you go to that community and you can park a car on the driveway, like a pickup truck on the driveway. It's got sidewalks. It's got street lights. It's got everything you want, where these are things in the past that would always fall through the cracks. Arlene, you know what we're talking about, right?
Creekside
Yeah.
Park.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it just well, and it's a learning process. I mean, 7, back in the day when a 7 was first developed, these things were unknown, you know, and so it's got challenges there. But as we live and learn, and of course, the city has more staff, more support, a lot more helpful. But that, like I say, is just some examples of what we do, and I think we're doing the job. And I'll take any questions if anybody has any.
Thank you, Jeff, for that presentation. We certainly appreciate being here. We have one question, Councilmember Beer.
I have a particular detail that I haven't noticed. Can you go back to the first house that you showed? Amanda 409, right? Amanda and I walked through this house, and it has a stack of 3 windows. And in the drawing, they look to be equally spaced, but in reality, they're not.
Which ones?
So that tower of 3 windows are
Yeah,
equally spaced,
okay.
but in the picture,
Let's
we
see.
noticed that they're not.
Well, there's the 3 there, but now let me go back. I gotta I can't. 1, 2, 3.
See how the top 2 are real close together. And the only reason I ask the question is, when a drawing doesn't match what actually happens, what do you do? Yeah.
No, it happens, and I mean, it's just it's the nature of the beast. You just work through it, you know.
Torch with a flag.
Yeah.
Should have that lower one.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes reality intrudes. You know, more than once you'll have a situation where, you know, I've seen it where the back of the house is supposed to have, a basement and a porch and all that, and when they're done, there's no basement. It's all dirt. I mean, when they go back in there and start digging and building, the elevation just doesn't allow for it. So I think that sometimes reality intrudes, and you just have to kind of work through it. You know, my inclination is not to say tear it down, do it again. You know, you just and we're fortunate we have a pretty good track record. I think that big, and I think staff's done a great job, but. Again, we're trying to do our part to make sure staff has all the pieces to make sure stuff like this doesn't happen. Because generally speaking, somebody that a building inspector, your typical building inspector doesn't know anything about this, you know. And so I think that the city has done a good job over the years, policing this. And I think Louisa and Tracy and I think the ARB, we're all on the same page. And I think anybody on staff can email me, call me anytime, and we'll work through it.
Well, Jeff, thank you so much. We appreciate it. We don't want to get too far in the weeds of the merits of trying to have an ARB meeting today. But,
we're having one tomorrow.
But if there are some questions.
I have a high level question.
I have a comment.
Very high level. What would you say, so in our last UDO, we were kind of like, we wanted front porches on all our houses.
Sure.
What would you say, and Tracy can maybe chime in too, what would you say is the #1 kind of pushback that developers kind of come, or?
You know, honestly, I think that real estate prices being what they are, generally speaking, when you say, like a lot of them come to the table with the roofs with shingles, like above the garage here and above the porch. And we'll say, no, we want metal. And really, most of the time, the answer answer is, okay. Or sometimes they'll say, oh, it's only money, that type of thing. Just kiddingly, and so, yeah, I Andrew, I think that, a lot of reticence is, like, take the Kelly, that they went through a couple of developers before they settled in, and everybody was panicking. It's too close to the railroad tracks, it's too close to Jimmy Carter and all, and it sold out immediately, so, yeah, so I think holding a developer's feet to the fire at this stage of the game is pretty easy.
Thank you.
Councilmember Gaynor.
Just a comment, Jeff, this is a great presentation, because it's the first time I've been able to really get a picture of
What are these guys doing?
what,
I know,
what
yeah.
they bring to you and your value add.
Right.
And I appreciate what you guys do. The ARB's doing a great job. Thank you very much.
I appreciate it. All right.
Thanks so much.
Thanks.
We appreciate Did you have one?
No, I was just.
Okay.
Am I good?
Yeah, you're good. You're good. Thank you so much. Okay, let's move to other general updates. Johnson Dean Park update. Assistant City Manager, Mayor Beth Bender.
Good evening, Mayor and Council.
Good evening.
You had tasked us with bidding out Johnson Dean Phase 2, and the scope included 4 parking spaces, signage, a restroom, multi-use pavilion, landscaping, and a driveway. And you also requested for us to bring this to you before we had public input meetings to give you the first opportunity to look at this. So we have Andrea Greco. She is the landscape architect and project manager with Root Designs, who won the bid. And she's just going to talk to you about the scope and the concept. And also there has been a collaboration between Parks, Green Space and Trails and the Tree Board. We have met several times for this, and we're scheduled to have a public input meeting this Thursday. Andrea?
Actually, if you could look at the, if I could have the number 1 PDF first. Thanks. Hi, good evening. I'm Andrea Greco with Root Design Studio. I'm a landscape architect and project manager, and happy to be working on this project. Johnson Dean Park, probably all familiar with where it is. It's a couple of blocks north of Thrasher Park, just north of here. And so the park, the preserve itself is a larger preserve. We're actually just focused in on the trailhead area, we'll say, and new entry area for the site. So today we've been working on the project for at least a month and a half now. The survey is actually in progress. We have done our site visits. We've done one in good weather and one in rainy weather, because there are stormwater concerns at the site as well. It's located just to the west, on the west side of North Barton Road, and it slopes, the topography slopes down from the driveway and street into this area, and it leads back into the preserve, which is back in this area, and the creek is back there as well. So the site is located between 2 residential properties. It's in a very residential area. There are utilities at the front of the site, which restricts our entry point. We're going to keep the entrance where it is now in that general location. There's neighbors close in on this side. There's a carport right there on the border on here. A steep slope right here. This is where the former utility building was in this area that was removed. And there's a large hemlock, which unfortunately is dying. I think it had to do with removal of the building affecting it. Over here in the back, there is an existing brick retaining wall that is in poor condition, still functioning, it's in poor condition. And to the north of that, some boundary trees behind these properties up here. In the back, you have this little added area here with some mature canopy trees and a sloped open area in that space. And of course, there's the well house at the site, which is a historic Norcross building that we were actually going to look to do some rehab on, and it functions too, which is pretty cool. So, and then the access to the park is from this point back here. So, if you could go to the other one, I might be able to do that too. Okay, so to this point, we've had a kickoff meeting with the city and both the Tree Preservation Board and the Parks, Green Space and Trails Board and some of the city representatives as well. And we presented 3 concepts to them, and from we narrowed it down to one with a tweak to it to make it just fit better after some discussions about it. We think this concept works very well. Keep in mind, once again, it's a limited area. The programming for this site is not everything on the table. We have a few things that we need to get done here, and we can accommodate those within the space that we have. We're going to keep the driveway in the approximate same location for the entrance. There'll be a new monument sign that is with the Norcross standard city signage at the front. The driveway will come down and it'll come out and a little bit away from the adjacent property and give them some more screening in between between their property and the park site. We're looking to put in 4 parking spaces, 3 regular and 1 handicap parking space. And those will be some kind of permeable pavement. We don't know if it's going to be gravel or what yet, but budget will probably end up dictating that. There may be room for some overflow grass parking spaces in case of a slightly bigger event. We're going to address the stormwater on the site by using bioswales and some simply planted rain garden areas in here. Because like I said, if you go out there now, you'll see some standing water, and there are some water issues there that we need to address and be proactive about. Some screening for the resident on the south side of the park property. There's going to be a pavilion, a maximum size of about 20 by 24, I think is about maximum size that we want, and a single stall family restroom structure. We haven't finalized the architecture yet for these, but they're going to be prefabricated buildings, and we're going to take elements from the designs at Thrasher Park, from some of the structures there to feed into here to have some consistency within Norcross. Then back here, you have a kiosk that'll serve as a trailhead for the park with some information on the park. We'd like to use this back area here for just a little passive seating area, potential education area, maybe a plant walk, outdoor classroom, but something really low-key and simple for that area. But we'd like to use that area if we can as well. And then, of course, the well house. The plan is to just slightly rehabilitate it, get some electricity to it so that the pump, which is good in there, can function, and actually be used for using water on the site, and also having it being used for storage and for historic interpretation. And then, of course, the access will remain the same. The Woodland Trail connection will be in that part, right where it is right now. So I think that is, I think that's everything. Are there any questions?
Thank you so much for that first look. We certainly appreciate you bringing it to council for us to have a quick overview. I know there are going to be several other meetings. This is just first blush. Council, open the floor for questions.
Yeah, really the only one I have looks good to me from this view. The driveway will also be permeable as well, or is it just asphalt?
We're looking into that. We want to reduce the impervious surfaces as much as possible because water is concerned. There is an existing paved driveway right there that's broken up right at this time, but we haven't said yet if that's going to be pervious or impervious or some combination thereof.
Yeah, it would just be my view that as a nature preserve, as much of that we can keep to be, if you're looking at it when cars aren't there, to look like natural would be the optimal. But if you can't do it, you can't do it. But I would prefer us try to do it.
Sure.
Thank you.
Councilmember Bear.
Looks good to me too. I'm excited about it. The only thing that you said that the pavilion and the restroom would draw inspiration from Thrasher Park. I'd love to see them draw inspiration from Discovery Garden Park as well, because that's a similarly sized park and it's got newer restrooms and newer pavilions and so on in it. So between both of those could maybe provide some inspiration.
Any other questions, council?
The kiosk, I know we're getting way into the details, the mayor loves this, but I would love for the kiosk to draw inspiration from national parks and as well. You know, I don't want it to be too complicated, but you know, when you go to a trailhead in a national park. And is the only reason the bathroom's there is to service the pavilion?
A combination of that, because there will be some low-level organized events there. So, but that was in our scope of
Okay, perfect.
thank you so much
Okay.
for being here with us tonight. We certainly
Thank you.
appreciate it. Okay, let's move to board appointments, which we will discuss in exec. And down to city manager's report.
Two things, Mayor. One is, I know that we had tried to see whether the May 16th would work for a budget retreat, and it doesn't, so we'll be looking at getting your feedback on a date and time, and I got the message about late afternoon might be a good time to do something. So we'll get back with you on that. I'm excited to announce that we have a new assistant to the city manager who will be starting next Monday. Her name is Charlene Marsh. She graduated from the University of Georgia with an undergraduate in political science. She was the student body vice president. She has a master's of public administration, also from UGA. For the last 2 years since graduating, she's held internships with Athens Clarke County, with Historic Athens, and she's currently a management fellow with the city of Decatur. And that saved the icing on the cake for last. She graduated from Norcross High. So she lives 6 minutes from here. So she'll be joining us next Monday. She's excited, and she's exactly what I was looking for. So the timing worked out perfectly. And that's it for me tonight.
Thank you, Eric, for that report. We certainly look forward to having your assistant on board. Let's move to items for discussion. The Norcross Activity Center. Beth Brown, so we have outlined for that.
Hi, I'm Beth Brown with the Norcross Housing Authority, 19 Garner Street, is our business address. We're here to request that the city update the LCI in order to include, or the Norcross Housing Authority is located in that LCI. And in order for us to be more competitive with our tax credit application, it needs to be an updated LCI. And so we've contracted with Mosaic in order to update that. And I should probably turn it over to Melissa with Mosaic, as she was integral in updating the report.
Thanks. So as Beth mentioned, this is something that would help the Housing Authority be more competitive in DCA's allocation of tax credits. So essentially, when DCA is looking at those tax credits, if the property is in an area that's part of a current revitalization plan, it would be able to score more points. And in this situation, you have an LCI, or revitalization plan, for this area, but it was from 2008. So we did this update to update some of the demographics, some housing indicators, and also incorporate housing goals that the city has established since 2008 into that plan. And we're hoping that council will approve that, so it will be brought current.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
But before
Any
you
questions?
before
Yeah.
you before you sit down, council, do we have any questions? Councilmember Myers.
Just wanted to be clear, there's no financial impact to the city to get the LCI updated.
Correct.
So it's being covered.
Yes.
Just work for the staff, right, Tracy?
Yes, we appreciate her help.
Councilmember Gaines.
Does a change in the LCI require a comment period and a public information period, like it would if we were, say, updating the UDO or other comprehensive plans?
What I've seen with other municipalities, it's done administratively.
Okay.
Of course, with approval.
That doesn't require anything like a comprehensive plan update or something like that? Okay, that's all I wanted to know.
Municipalities update their plans all the time. Any other questions, council? Thank you so much for being here tonight. Let's move down to item 2, affordable housing developer recommendation. Corbin.
Good evening, everyone. Hope you're doing well today. This agenda item is relating to the affordable housing developer recommendation as part of the low-income housing tax credit process through which the previous speaker mentioned about. And I'll just get right to it. The recommendation, and I'll explain a little bit more after this part, but is to authorize city staff to draft a letter of support for Walton Communities, that affordable housing developer. And so essentially key city staff, including community development director, economic development director, senior planner, business development manager, as well as a member of the development authority, reviewed each application. There were only 2 and selected Walton Communities as the preferred developer. As a bit of background, as you know, the program does allocate federal tax credits in order to help the development of low-income housing. And in Georgia, the program, of course, is administered through the Department of Community Affairs, and they are judged using a highly competitive scoring process that was developed by DCA. And final applications are due on May 20th, so as part of this, we wanted to get that review done in the appropriate time. And so, essentially, the Norcross Development Authority helped to create a scoring rubric. You have some in your packet there, and wanted to just briefly go over both of the developers. The first developer was Blue Ridge Atlantic. Excuse me.
Blue Ridge.
Oh yeah, Blue Ridge Atlantic Development, and the second one, of course, is Walton Communities. They were very close. Both have had very strong applications. We are hoping eventually that both do get selected by DCA. It is very tough, but there are some key differences that may make that possible, but we'll see. But the main difference in these applications were really the developer experience. The principals and the people involved from Blue Ridge did have significant experience. However, the company that they have formed was formed in 2018, so that's where a lot of the difference in this you see. There's some other differences in there that are less, less significant, but nonetheless, each category, Walton Communities did come up ahead by a little bit at least. So the recommendation from the staff is to select them and have staff write a letter of recommendation, which would go to the Department of Community Affairs.
Okay. Thank you for that presentation. Certainly appreciate you sharing that information. We have a comment from Councilmember Myers.
Yes. In our previous agenda item, there's an LCI update to strengthen the package for submittal to this. My question would be, did that take into account the scoring at all, or was that's separate from the scoring?
Did the scoring take that into account, you're saying?
Yeah, did the scoring take the LCI?
Yes, the LCI is part of that. Part of the, and I'll go through each of these: developer experience, project approach, connectivity, community impact, consistency with the priorities of Norcross, architectural aesthetics, streetscape, and commitment to diversity, as well as innovation. So that part was in project approach. And there's a line item here that talks about,
I guess the meat of my question is, did both, when we updated the LCI, both took advantage of that updated of the LCI, or was only one?
No, this is led by Walton Communities.
What I'm saying was only one of them, it's Norcross's LCI. So what I'm saying is the LCI with both properties within the LCI, so both benefit from an update of the LCI, only one benefited from the update of the LCI?
No,
and how did that flow into our scoring?
I'm going to ask Tracy, do you remember if the boundaries of that incorporate both? I know the other one is at Beaver Ruin and Beaufort Highway, so if you could speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, they both have the opportunity to do things like this, and as far as we know, Norcross Housing Authority has been the only one who's pursued any update to our plans, and it's worth noting that in DCA's scoring rubric of their own, they won't take the city's comprehensive plan, so it has to be a modification to an existing other plan, but as far as we know, Walton and Norcross Housing Authority were the only ones who took the approach to look into
That kind of gets to
freshening up plan.
Yeah, that guess so. One did, one did not. So that might be an opportunity for the other one where we to go with this recommendation because they seem to be both really strong applications, and if the other one may have done this next little step, we might have had really two even better applications. So that's kind of why I was getting to the crux of what I was getting to is if we're so fortunate to accept your recommendation, that we would probably recommend the other organization do something like that because they're very strong, both of them. So and our city desperately needs it. So.
Right, and based on the day we scored it, we scored based on the information we knew on the day of scoring.
Absolutely.
So that's where we came up with the score.
Thank you.
That kind of leads into outreach too. There's a component of this that is community outreach and engagement, and again, as you see with the scores, there's multi communities we felt did a better job of doing that. So kind of all ties in.
So it looks like you will need a recommendation from council at the,
Yeah, to authorize city staff to move forward with that letter, which would be signed by
with
mayor.
your recommendation.
Hmm?
With your recommendation.
Correct.
Councilmember Gaines.
I'm a little confused. Is this the get point
Yes.
that we're talking about?
There's
'Cause
2
does
points
that-
this year. Yeah, there's 2 points. Every year they change it around. But,
We have 2 points?
We have 2 points. We can't separate them, but there are 2 points given to communities like
So you
ours.
can't separate them.
Right, I asked that
both
already.
To the same person. Okay.
Right.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Lee. Certainly appreciate the information. Let's move to position classification.
Here, I'll take that. So this is where we have today a master's crafts worker position in Mary Beth's department, and then we have historically had a contract position which is currently filled by Merle. Merle is retiring. We went out to look for applicants for the beautification manager / landscape management, and what we found was that that's a position that really needs benefits. That wasn't something that was important to Merle. She's worked with the city for years, and we recognize that at the same time, the master crafts worker is a position that could be contracted out. And so what we're suggesting is keep the same number of positions and simply switch the master crafts worker to a contract position. We can always take that up in this upcoming budget process or later if we want to rethink that, but we found a really good candidate. It's really interesting. So Merle has leftover materials that we can't as the city use. They're donated to the garden club. The garden club, as you might have noticed today, has been setting up to sell materials. The garden club takes the money, as I understand it. Okay, Mary Beth, you tell me if I get it wrong. They take the materials we donate, and the money that comes from that goes to a scholarship at Gwinnett Tech. Well, the individual that would like to come work for us, if we move forward with this action, actually got a scholarship from the garden club for Gwinnett Tech. So we think we've got a great candidate, and so we're trying to move this around, not change the number of authorized positions, but we think we've got a great candidate, and he impressed Merle, which is, I think, the sign of approval we're looking for. So if you're interested, in 2 weeks we'd ask you to authorize swapping those 2 positions. We'll still have one contract, we'll still have one with full benefits, but we'll be swapping which has which.
Will we be doing anything in recognition of Merle's?
We've talked about that, and I mean, the answer is we should be doing something in recognition of Merle. She's actually said that we already have with something over in Thrasher Park. Well, I wanted to do the tree. She has declined that, but there's Mary Beth. The plaque is at the
pavilion.
At the pavilion.
She's going to be doing some consulting work for several months.
Yeah.
So she'll still be around.
So we still have time.
We still have time to do something, but yeah, she's had an incredible impact on the city.
Great.
As has Mary Beth.
Great. Sounds like that worked out well.
Yeah.
For us. So we'll be moving this forward for the policy, the regular session. Yes. Okay. Downtown parking signage. Councilmember Hickson, looks like that one's yours.
Yeah, I've got the remainder of them. I don't know how that happened. Mr. Mayor, if you would allow us, and it's not a problem, I'd like to, because I think 3 of these 4 are kind of all the same. Could we maybe handle item number 6, the multi-language park signage, and then move into the parking?
Sure.
Does anyone have a problem with that?
Any
That's good.
objection to that?
No, sir.
Okay.
I had a constituent, in fact, there's a few Norcross residents in this photo here that's on our agenda packet. She was in Orlando, and she saw this, and she thought it was just a really neat thing. And I can tell you, when I am in Thrasher Park, it's just such a beautiful thing to see all the children running and laughing and having a good time. But one of the downsides is there's just, most of the parents are standing on the periphery and not really communicating. But she thought this was a good idea to maybe helps, we're a welcoming community. The mayor had us become a welcoming American community about, I guess, 4 or 5 years ago. And I thought this might be a good idea for us to, we have 60% of our community is Spanish, and this would allow primarily English speakers to maybe have, engage in a new way besides their kids playing. So I thought it was really neat for the city, and I told her I'd put it on the agenda and see if there's any feedback from staff or for council.
I think we all think it's a good idea. Any objection to moving that forward?
Awesome.
Okay. Next item.
Well, I was hoping for a breather before we get into parking. All right.
I have a follow-up question here. So, your recommendation is as pictured, or you want to do multiple languages?
I would let
staff.
I would let staff work with our Parks and Green Space Commission and reach out to some of our, multi-language communities. We have a lot of languages that are spoken, and just see what's the lowest hanging fruit. What can we roll it out? What park do we want to put it at? I don't even know if we need council action on this. Would we, Eric?
I don't think it's necessary if there isn't a strong opposition.
I only have one.
We'll look at putting this into our standard colors.
I would only have one recommendation here. In addition, not in replace of, in addition, a QR code at the bottom.
That was, yes.
That you could take a picture of, and it would have whatever language you want. So for those who don't speak those primary languages, we've covered the bases with a QR code that's printed on the corner.
You need internet for that.
Here we go. We could segue into that instead of parking. Might actually be easier to handle.
Controversial. Yeah.
I knew y'all get a kick out of it.
Everything was going so smoothly.
Break the monotony, right, Bruce?
All right, parking. Downtown parking signage. I was supposed to go out and get a bunch of photos of all of our parking signs and kind of the variation that we have, and I'm trying to be, Pound is working hard on it. We got a signage replacement program in, but I think there's a little bit more urgency as we kind of working towards complete opening from COVID. I think the classic example is right there in Betty Malden Park. There's just this little sign like this that says additional parking, Cotton Gin. It still says Chase's Wingery. So that sign is out of date. It doesn't fit our design standards, and it's rather small. I thought that maybe we would work with electronic signage, not electronic signage, but like Google Maps, make sure that people know where our signage is, and try to push this to the forefront of making sure we have a consistent signage in the proper place to get people to where they need to park in a little bit quicker manner.
To add to that, there's also should be some signage showing the way from the parking lot to downtown.
Okay.
Because there is a trail behind City Hall that's not very well used, and it's probably because it's not very well marked. And it's a shortcut to get back into downtown, so it would make using the parking lot somewhat easier. I'm not sure if this is the right place to bring this up, but we have city-owned spaces in parking garages, 2 parking garages. I don't know what the status of our ownership is. In other words, how much of it are we getting access to? There's anecdotal evidence that would suggest that we don't have very much open space in the Brunswick, that even though that was part of the deal. The library, I don't have any idea how it's being used, but clearly we don't have the signage properly directing people to it. So I would also add to this that staff should work with the Brunswick and make sure we have the right the spaces that we were promised to begin with, and that we're getting good signage so we can use these.
So,
I'd piggyback on that. As a suggestion to do that, I cannot remember where I saw it, but there was somewhere I've been and I've traveled, public parking that was free. The sign was marked on the ground, right? It said green lots are all public parking. So you would go into a lot and everything that was green, painted green, was free. If it wasn't painted green, it wasn't free. So for something like the Brunswick, it might be able to identify, our signs would say free public parking, green lots only, or green spaces only, or something like that. So we clearly identify it. It doesn't change any rules because it's marked clearly how many are ours. As a quick add-on to what you just suggested. In addition to that add-on, I think we need to be deliberate about when it says public parking and free public parking. I know I've talked to a couple people who know they go here, they go, oh, there's parking at the city hall, but then they see police officer cars and they're like, maybe I shouldn't be parking next to police officer, like police vehicles. So we need to be very intentional about free public parking here. Downtown free public parking. We need to say the word free because I think psychologically people see police cars and they don't think I should be parking near them at all, right? And so that might be something that was brought to my attention. I didn't think about it until they said it. And I'm like, that's probably a good idea.
There's also private parking. So by designating public parking and not designating the private parking as available,
right,
then that might alleviate some of the contention of people parking in private spaces.
Yeah, and I think ultimately to your point and Councilman Hickson's adjustment here, it's really to activate the parking we already have established in our community. It's right. How do we maximize people's psychology, maximize people's availability and understanding of what we have in our city available today, right? That's got to be our lowest hanging fruit to address parking, is to maximize the access to what we have today.
Okay.
So just kind of reacting, I think in the Brunswick, the parking that we're entitled to, I suspect is all the parking that is below the barrier that you need a cart to access. And so what we might do there is put signs up that indicate that it's public parking and then indicate what hours of the day, because I think it's like 8 to 5. But it's 50 spaces. So we can look at putting the signage that makes it clear. I think the challenge we might have is that some of the residents of Brunswick find it convenient to park at the lowest level, which are the spaces that are technically ours during the workday. And so we can look at making it clear there. And in fact, I think they would all be green because basically during weekdays, and I'll make sure they get the right hours, but I think it's 8 to 5. Those are ours to use, and the residents of Brunswick, I guess, technically could park in public parking spaces, but they shouldn't be leaving their cars there all day, every day because of the convenience of it being closest to the exit. Similarly, I think over at the library, we could talk to the library staff about putting up signs that make it clear that those are after hours. So during library hours, they're technically not ours.
I would like to clarify that. I know
Well,
what
we can look at
I know what the IGA says. That might be something worth addressing because the librarians are pretty fast and loose with, we can park there. If we can park there whenever, and the librarians don't care, and they're put on the ground, maybe the library board would also be willing to readdress that.
There's a lot of parking in that library.
Then we should be able to readdress it because that's our park parking.
It's not being enforced though. Those hours aren't being enforced.
Yeah, but we're not allowed to put a sign up that says
You
Public
look at as
parking.
far as signage.
yeah.
Yeah, and you.
I'm kind of with you. I'm like, hey, let's not poke the bear. If you're gonna put some signs up,
But I think we're all in agreement with what you're suggesting. We need better signage for these public parking spaces. Of course, everything you just mentioned can be done administratively, so you turn it over to the city manager to execute.
Where you are helps.
I like that. Those are the easy.
Another item on this agenda, though, is also what to do about South Peachtree parking, particularly between Jones Street and Holcomb Bridge Road.
Yes.
Where today there's a lot of monopolization of those spots for longer than just stopping in for a drink or dinner or shopping. Sometimes folks are staying there all day long. They could be employees. They could be other folks in the city.
This is like agenda item number 5.
You want to move to that one? That's fine.
Is that what you're, sorry.
Yeah, I mean, they're all connected.
Yeah, they're all connected, but if
Yeah, let's try to do it in order so that we can keep it flow.
You want me to?
You ready to do that one?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're on number 5, downtown merchant parking.
Yeah, okay, so a little bit of history. We created, it was this odd amalgamation of lots previously. I know most people remember that. And we built a gravel lot upon speaking with the merchants. We put up some, nice, we ran power cords out there. We put up really nice lighting at our own cost to encourage more parking over there from a safety environment. And then COVID hit, and it just became easier for people to park in front of their own shops. And, we really didn't hear much about parking for 2 years for obvious reasons, but now we're starting to hear more and more that parking is an issue. And it would be an opportunity for us to ensure that South Peachtree remains open. Our parking study says during peak hours, you have a 90% chance of not finding a parking space on South Peachtree. And I remember the informal parking study we did back in 2014, 2015, we found out there's roughly 80 cars that are employee parking. So if we can move even a fraction of those, even half of those, over to the downtown employee parking, that does free up quite a bit of parking spaces on the main drag there. So that's kind of the background. I wanted to put it on there to make sure we chatted about it, kind of a response to a message from one of our local business owners.
Okay,
That's as far as I got.
All right.
Can I make a few comments? What I've heard, well, first of all, I think what we need to keep in mind is that, okay, you've got Antique Traditions, Jimmy's opening up in 2.5 months, then you have Rosenham, then you're going to have the Refugee Coffee, and then the ice cream. So all of that's going to be full, so it's almost like you take them from here and put them in front of, our other businesses. So that's one thought, and something to think about, but also that the gravel lot has gotten a lot of pushback because for females, if it's raining, it ruins your shoes, and we've had 4 people fall in the gravel. So if we paved it, I think it would be way more appetizing, even if that's where we moved them. It makes it a lot cleaner and nicer, and we don't run the risk, because you look at some of the elderly folks that work downtown, and Randy and Good Things and Taste of Britain, certain folks, so you really don't want them really stumbling around in the gravel. That's a point I'd like to make.
I think that's fair. I asked the city manager for an update on our South Peachtree parking all the way down to Autry Street. Before, would y'all mind entertaining that thought?
On that topic, I would love to hear, because this was brought to council's attention quite a while ago to optimize the parking on South Peachtree, and I'd love to know where that is.
Yeah.
So you didn't fund it, but what our new finance director has been working on is looking at all of the SPOS buckets that we have. We have 2009 SPOS money that still remains. We have 2014 SPOS money that remains. 2017 is a little bit more complicated because we issued $8 million in bonds, and we haven't spent $2 million of it 5 years later. So working through how we're using each of those, because each of those pools has a different set of rules in terms of what council at the time adopted in terms of how they can be spent. But I think the parking, and I've told you this before, as we sort through the 2017 SPOS, the current SPOS, one of the three categories was parking, and that was code for the library. The library's done. It was parking because we were obligated for a portion of the building, and we paid for the parking garage, but ultimately we paid for 47%, I think, of the entire structure. But we should have parking money left, and this should be a project that's eligible for that parking money in the 2017 SPOS. But we need to understand how we spent the bond funds, how we spent SPOS today. I think we're getting close. But I think that will be a funding source that you can tap to. You talked about either paving the lot or putting in an impervious surface of pavers there in the lot, doing the parking on South Peachtree, and given the probable scope of this project, I think you'll have the funds available. But we just need to make sure, because we're not done with SPOS. And we're only 5 out of 6 years through the SPOS, so some of the excess money is the money that will be collected over the next 12 months.
Councilmember Bear.
I'm trying to say this diplomatically. I know that we've been through some transition with changing from Rudolph to Eric, but I'm frustrated because I feel like I've found out two things now that I thought were moving ahead, and they're not. I thought the pedestrian crossing over the railroad tracks was moving ahead because we had a good guy on with the Norfolk Southern, and we were moving ahead with that. And I thought that South Peachtree Street was moving ahead, and now I found out that both of them don't have funding. So again, I'm trying to say this politically correctly and so on, but I'd like to know what else we've asked to move forward and it's hung up with funding, because time is of the essence on this stuff. And you know, I'm on the DDA with Tim Moresco, and the DDA came to me and said, Josh, we need parking downtown. So I came to y'all and I said, how can we get some more parking? And that was what came out of it, and it stalled. I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
No, I think we typically ask, I mean, how long is that? We worked on South Peachtree parking before Matt and Bruce were elected, previously.
But I mean, I brought it back to council's attention 6 months ago, I think, or 9 months ago. My timing could be off, but I'm just like, I thought.
Well, typically we do ask if there's funding attached to it. So
That wasn't my recollection. My recollection is that we funded the design.
Well then, where
So
did it falter? I mean, where?
That's the actual construction of the lines.
is the design done?
So that might be the question, is where are we with the design? 'Cause that's the part that is either in-house or, as I recall, we did authorize funds for. And it wasn't a lot, if I remember right.
I think he said he would design it in-house.
That may have been why it wasn't that
There
much.
was no money. There was no money allocated.
And then we asked them to design a bridge between Thrasher and Cochrane City County too.
We have a lot of demands
Yeah,
all
that
the
one's
time.
Yeah.
So I'll support that. You know, obviously we want to get things done expeditiously. We need to be more creative about how we have funding, but we also, I know we have a lot of funding available, and I know we've got a new finance director here that's clawing through the details. So anything we can do to expedite that process, because to Kate's point here, a lot of these businesses that she mentioned are going to be opening or over the summer experiencing some of their peak hours, and we won't have anything likely produced by that time. So coming forward the following year, my expectation would be that we are completed construction, not thinking about designs. We have talked to Norfolk Southern, we've gotten approval for things, we've completed construction. So that means we need to be approving this plan and the dollars as soon as possible. So construction is completed being completed around about this time next year, where people need to do that, and there's a true opening of outside of COVID. That's what I'm hoping. So to me, that would be my point of view on that particular spot. Going back to the number 5 here, the downtown merchant market, I did have 3 points that I did want to mention. I don't know part of the discussion where they are, so I'm going to throw these grenades out here. One is moving all the merchants from the downtown parking areas altogether, and potentially using our trolley or a trolley to address Kate's points of parking on gravel. Where we can transport those individuals from an employee parking space or the library if we figure that out, or the Brunswick 8 to 5, or whatever it is. We can have them transported directly to their storefront. So you no longer can say, hey, I had to walk a long way in the rain, or I had gravel, or whatever. We could solve that potentially by having some kind of transportation, and then open up all that parking. The other thing, as an idea that I've been talking about, is having the merchants have tags in their car so you know where those merchants are. So if we start to talk about limited parking hours or anything like that, those businesses, yeah, you can park in front of your store, that's fine, but you're limited on time. And as code enforcement or something comes through, they'll mark the tire and say, well, you've got a tag, so you're a business owner, you shouldn't be parking here for an extended period of time. As a difference or alternative to having the whole entire thing limited in parking hours for just regular patrons.
What's wrong with that?
I'm not saying there's nothing wrong with it. I'm saying as an alternative, if the issue we're trying to solve is downtown merchant parking, which is what it's saying, as an alternative to that is we can say, all right, we're going to limit all downtown merchant parking either by completely separating them altogether and they can't park down there, or limiting their hours specifically and leaving it open for normal patrons who maybe want to grab a dinner and a beer and a whatever, and see how that works. If that doesn't solve our problems, then I think we could take a more extreme measure and say, hey, it's limited all the way downtown because we want to move people through. But as a first step, addressing what I'm reading here is downtown merchant parking, employee parking as the title, is what I'm trying to go after. And I think long term, I think as a council and as a city and as merchants, we need to think about potentially creating some kind of tax allocation district to fund some other methods of parking, right? And I'm not going to say what those are right now, but if we were serious about wanting to do some permanent parking structures or anything of that sort, we're probably going to need more financing from the entirety of the people that will benefit from it. And so we probably want to talk about that long term. But I wanted to bring those three things out: the tagging of the vehicles, either by sticker or something like that, or taking them all out of the mix altogether, and they can't no longer park downtown, and we'll trolley them or some other way to get them down there.
We did do the permits, and it worked very well. It did. Half of the street from probably 45 South up went down to South P Street. The other half was in the City Hall parking lot. And we did do the permits. I had logs of what businesses had what numbers, but it takes somebody enforcement, and fortunately, unfortunately, I was the one out there and saying, okay, you got to move your car and that kind of thing. So, but eventually, everybody seemed to kind of get with the program, and we were doing really well. And then COVID, and so then everything was shut down, and so when it started back just a little bit, there wasn't anybody downtown, and so we kind of lost our momentum. But it did work.
Can we revisit that?
Yeah.
If it's success, that's why I put it on here. It seemed to be a success.
It was.
There is another point that I think that we're thinking about business owners and employees and shops and whatnot. There's also offices moving into town.
Yes.
So we've got more than just the merchants and the restaurants. Now we're going to have potential other workers that are there all day long. So it's going to exacerbate the problem. It's going to add to the problem. I don't see why a 3-hour limit on parking on the head-in spaces along there wouldn't solve that problem. You could set the hours up so that, say, after 9 o'clock at night, it expires. So, if someone comes down and gets there at 6 and doesn't want to leave till 11, it's not a problem. The biggest problem seems to be at lunchtime anyway. So It would solve the issue, leaving those spaces for people that are in and out for lunch, where that close-in parking spot is most valuable. I understand the permit process. It seems a little reversed to me. Normally you have a permit to park, not a permit to not park.
Yeah.
And so
yeah.
that seems hard to manage to me, that
It was hard to.
the permit to not park is, well, I
Well,
brought
you
my
make
wife's
it,
car
you
today,
make
I
it
don't
permit
have
only
that.
parking in the lot,
In what lot?
the employee parking lot here.
In the employee parking lot.
Yeah, just permit only.
But that doesn't keep you from parking on South Peach Street.
Yeah, but it does keep people from parking out there.
It would, if that was the goal, and that may be the goal. I didn't recognize that was necessarily the point, but what I'm focusing on is trying to keep the very priority, premier customer spaces in front of the shops available for customers, and not available for, not really keeping people that are there for the day out of them altogether. Now, you mentioned if you only got rid of half, you need to get rid of all of them, because there should be no parking there all day long. That's,
I mean, as part of the discussion, and really not to combat it, but just to say, if we got different types of businesses, and I don't know what's in the different types of businesses, but if we get different types of businesses, maybe I'm doing a design consultant. I work there and I'm doing design stuff. I park somewhere else, but I'm coming there as a customer to do design consultant. We may be there 3-4 hours, and we limit the parking by 3 hours. I'm still a customer, but my business takes 3 to 4 hours. And so I just, before we go to dealing with people who are customers and residents, as much as I would like to deal with, if we have a downtown merchant issue, let's see if we can solve that first. And if that's not working, we still have an avenue to continue to say go forward. That's just what I would say.
Yeah, so my suggestion would be that we start with working with merchants and see how much we can resolve the issue. We get into limiting downtown parking for customers, we have to hire someone to do that. I mean, right now, code is not able to respond to every call. Police department's probably still here? No, I'm sorry. I mean, Bill's going to be asking for positions in this next budget. We have inadequate law enforcement for the call volume that we're handling today. So to put police officers on parking duty is not really.
You could walk the beat.
I could do it. I could do it.
Well, I think it's a holistic.
Kate and I will do that, but I would, I mean,
But
we
Eric,
understand the concern. I think we'd start with
if we install
merchants.
something like that, business owners are going to want their employees to park somewhere else, and it should be a trickle down kind of thing. You need your employees to park somewhere else. You need to. Okay, now the city has implemented this. We're trying to take some low hanging fruit, move them over here. And to be fair, Matt, we've invested a lot of money in structured parking.
Mm-hmm.
We've invested a lot of citizens' money in structured parking. I know a lot of people want more, but you know, if you kind of look at our structured parking, the Brunswick is 0.3 miles, City Hall is 0.2 miles, the library is 0.3 miles, and the suggestion has been for roughly around the south end, which is Carlisle Street, it's 0.2 miles. It's a minute different walk. So we've already shown that people aren't willing to walk. So I don't know where we put structured parking, to be honest with you. I just think we need to start signage. I love the idea of a trolley, especially if we meet them at City Hall from 8 to 10:30 and trolley them in. I think that's a great idea. I didn't even think about that. Or City Hall, or the Brunswick.
So rainy days, snowy days, bad weather days, they're getting front door service. I mean, it's probably better than what you would get if you had to find a parking spot all the way down. Now we can. That opens up another can of worms that we'll have to address, because I know you're looking at me about that. But we can address that issue if that solves part of that problem. Because I can recognize myself. You know, I'll be the bad guy here. I'm sometimes don't want to walk in the rain if I'm in a suit or whatever, or I've got my kids and we're trying to do something. We've got, like I said, we have different types of businesses that cater to different types of people. So I understand that a little bit. Even for a merchant, I don't want to walk in the rain. I've got packages and stuff I'm delivering, because some of these places don't have trucks to deliver, or FedEx are bringing it from their house. So I want to be empathetic to that, you know, to as much as I can, to solve some of that problem. We're say, hey, well, we've got a way for you to get to your establishment, front door to service. I don't know how we finance that. I don't know how we. It's an idea from this policy discussion. It's not necessarily
Yeah.
a
Well, I think-
fleshed idea.
I think we have, look, we've debated this as one council ad nauseum, and trust me, since I've been on council, we've debated every single angle. We're now getting some new ideas, to be honest with you, which is awesome. Can we direct staff, do you think there's a benefit for us to direct staff? The city manager has the authority to do the parking, the employee parking permit. Can we direct him to re-engage on that? Do we even need direction on that?
It's already in place. I don't
Is there
think-
any opposition to re-engaging that? We'll do it.
Yeah, it's already in place. We just delayed it because of COVID. But a couple of things, let me just throw this out here. You mentioned, you both had a couple of really good points. Paving the parking lot, I think that would take the edge off a lot of our issues. Is the council ready to move forward with an RFP on that, or how?
I would have two or three major questions. One is, what does Norfolk Southern say to a permanent structure in terms of what our agreement is with Norfolk Southern?
With the parking?
Yeah, with parking. So
With
if
paving that? I don't know.
Yeah, with paving it, will they say, hey, here's a lease, here's the cost that you're gonna have to pay.
Where are you paying for?
Are we, I mean, I don't know. I thought
Yeah.
we're paying for it no matter what.
Yeah.
Gravel or not.
Yeah.
And then the other point that I would make here is I would want a holistic design of what we've already approved plus this,
Yeah.
not
Right.
pave it and then think about the other piece that
Tear
we've
it
already
up once.
take the whole thing out and do a whole design if we're going to do it. That would be my major points.
And then I would add to that, 'cause I agree with everything you said, but can we find something that's more green than blacktop, right? I mean, this city is
Oh,
known
yes.
for its.
Sorry.
Pervious.
I saw this in Germany.
Yeah, there you go. I don't know if that meets the criteria that,
And then there's a really, really cool one at the water tower.
Oh.
It doesn't work with high heels.
Yeah, you'll
I
see.
get mine stuck all the time.
So I think the water tower, Eric, our water tower for Gwinnett County, they have a really, I don't know how much it costs, but I saw the video on it. It's really cool. It looks like concrete, but you can just pump water on it they put a fire hose on it for hours. You walk on it and it's dry in a couple seconds.
It's still hot though. It's
It's pervious.
Yeah, but it's still,
So it eliminates some of the.
it's pretty cool though.
It's cool, but I don't know what it costs. But I'm not a huge fan of black tops where I can look down on our pretty landscape of trees and all I see is asphalt and concrete. So,
But I mean, inherent and more parking is,
I get you.
so,
Well, I just said an idea and you said it. Oh, sorry, I'm playing the
I mean,
video.
I would love that, but I mean, if we've had 4 people fall on gravel, they're gonna fall on that too. I don't wanna think we've solved an issue. And I completely agree with Councilmembers Myers and Gaynor that we need a holistic plan, because when I did a parking audit on Friday night at 7 o'clock, and when I was over there, that gravel lot, I was like, this lot is not optimized for being able to get the most cars into, and so I agree with that.
What's our? So we got one more agenda item on this parking. So the initial one was some good signage. We can have staff do that immediately. The employee parking, we can, for now, just say, hey, you're gonna park over there. Please be careful. Park at your own risk.
And we also have some parking
Yeah, and
here,
park here.
so.
And that's and as far as the high heels, I think I would love to do something like I showed you. That's there on the. We may not even need to do an agreement. We might be able to do that without going to Norfolk Southern. But then we're going to add South Peachtree parking, and maybe employees can park there, especially the ones that are more likely to wear whoever wants to wear heels.
Right, I mean, I think there needs to, that design for South Beach Street needs to be done, and then we can implement it, and we can have more parking. And part of it could be fancy pervious, and part of it could be regular.
So, I mean, I think the direction we've given is what we've already approved in terms of the design, since we don't think we have a design yet, taking it from Holcomb to Autry, not from gravel to Autry, I believe is where it was before. We're asking a holistic, all the way down, optimize as much parking as you can. We might be able to we might be able to squeeze further additional parking than we even imagined. So that would be the direction I think we're at now. Is, do you agree? Is give us a design of the whole thing. Okay.
Yes, please.
Okay, sounds like, well, I have to defer to the city manager.
Yeah, I think you're gonna have to work with Norfolk Southern.
I had a call from their real estate guy this afternoon, so I'll be talking to him
Okay,
tomorrow.
good.
I'll let you know if I need.
But with the if you're gonna pave it and improve it in some way, you're gonna change it. My sense is it's gotta go along with this new guy, because it doesn't hurt his situation at all.
All right. City Hall parking deck. How we brought
Wait a
this
minute,
up.
let's make sure we're clear as mud on the.
Okay, on the two items in front of us. I think we've given direction for Eric to implement two things.
Signage, the employee parking, and then we're going to be looking at coming back with a full-blown design. And I think that our timing is going to work out for us, knowing that we have parking money from SPOS available too.
And you had mentioned CBDG money. It was such a small amount.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing that I'm sensitive to is we're going to be tearing out some sidewalk that was funded with federal dollars. I think that we should tell the county, get their concurrence, rather than risk that they find out later that we replaced something that they paid for. Because the county is in on this too, so it's not just us. It's they're the conduit. Anything that anyone later decides that we should have told the federal government, the county is involved in that since the money flows through them. I would think that they would respect the fact that we're going to replace and put in the parking, but still replace the sidewalk that we have to take out.
We'll certainly leave that in your hands. So,
well, I mean, there's a risk that they'll tell us to pay back the share of the money that we took from the federal government to put in the existing sidewalk. That's the risk, but they always have the right to come back later and tell us that. I just don't like doing something and risking that they find out later, and that could dampen our reputation with the county for the use of CDBG money going forward.
So are you going out for an RFP for the Holcomb Bridge all the way?
Look at the price tag to see if we need to do an RFP. I mean, I think the RFP that for the resurfacing probably doesn't cover this other type of material. So we may need one unique to this to do that.
For design?
Well, design we'll look at whether, I don't know that we need, it may be within if it's 30,000 under, I think I have the authority to do the design. We look at going with one of our on-call firms, so you've already selected them.
So can we get a commitment that if you need us for any financial assistance, we'll have that by the May policy session?
Yes.
I'm just trying to make sure that we nail this down so that 6 months from now we will have the conversation.
surprise.
Didn't we talk about this? Yes.
Mr. Mayor, is it appropriate for me now to bring something up regarding a project dashboard? I have asked for it since I joined council, and I'm piggybacking off of what Councilmember Beer said a couple of moments ago.
If it's one of the.
Yes, could I?
The advertised items, yes. If it's associated with one of the advertised items.
No, that's what I'm saying. It came up during the discussion we just had with an item here. So I'm asking, is it appropriate for me to ask for a project dashboard again now, based on what Councilmember Beer mentioned?
Like I said, if it's associated with the advertised item.
So I'd like to ask the city manager if he can look into providing a dashboard for mayor and council that shows all the projects that we have in flight, funding source, whatever information, and we can talk about it a little bit later. We can get information from the other council members to
So let me
prepare this
respond to that.
dashboard.
If you look at my evaluation and the items that I agreed to, I have a 5-year CIP that we'll be preparing, which is, I think, essentially a project dashboard. It'll show you what projects, capital projects you've approved. We have a pretty low threshold for capital projects. It'll show funding sources. You know, the key, and I think the concern over a couple of projects that were mentioned earlier is we adopted a budget in August, and within a couple of months after, started talking about projects that weren't funded. And the challenge that we have is we have multiple SPLOS open, but we need to get a handle, and the finance director left shortly after that. So yes, I think that we can address your concern. I would focus on capital projects, and that's something that I've already committed that we will develop a 5-year CIP, which is how governments normally, and I think if you go back in time, you'll find that you used to have a 5-year CIP, and at some point in history, stop doing that. That way, it'll show projects. It's easy for us to know exactly which ones we're talking about, and we've got a good tool in terms of Microsoft Teams where we can keep that type of information available to you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for bringing that
City
up.
Hall parking.
Yeah, City Hall parking.
Andrew, just one, the crosswalks, want to make sure that we're okay, we're heading in the right direction with the railroad crosswalks, that you're, did
Well,
that get addressed to your
Waiting on anything
satisfaction?
from city council for that project?
So, well, they weren't funded. I don't think that's going to be a significant dollar amount, although it's transportation. I think
So
the
we
question is, do we move forward with the crosswalks
Yes.
and risk coming back later with the railroad quiet zone, which might modify those? I would suggest that you do the crosswalks anyway now, because it's going to be a lot simpler, and you know that we're going to get to the finish line with those crosswalks. There's a risk that we come back later and have to modify them, and I've gotten from, well, Matthew Zaki got from Duluth detail about what those pedestrian crosswalks look like, but that's going to have to be incorporated into the design of each of those road crossings. And so,
I think
and you're talking 3 years probably at a minimum out. So if you want to see some benefit, and you want to strike while you know that Norfolk Southern is agreeable, I think you do the pedestrian crosswalks now and just risk that you might have to modify them at a future date as part of a major project to put in.
So this is where I'm a little confused. The last thing I remember we talked about was we're going to go off to RP to get the designs for both at the same time, and we would just go implement.
Yeah.
Like we'd say, hey, what would the design look like if you just did the crosswalks? What would the design look like if we did both? Can we input the walk and not?
Yeah, I remember that.
So it was like 2 weeks ago.
It was 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
I know it was very long ago. It was like 2 weeks ago.
So the information we received, the consultant that prepared a report that was delivered last January, I'll forward it to each of you, January of 2021, was done by Pond. It's an engineering firm that worked with the city of Duluth. Basically, the engineer in Duluth who has prior experience with railroad, she hasn't told us exactly where it was, said, you hit the railroad once, you don't go in and so we could look at a design, but from start until that report was produced, which preceded most of the discussion with the railroad, was 17 months. What I'm suggesting is go ahead and let's get the design, let's put in the railroad crossings now, because if you go through that process, what we talked about a couple of weeks ago, and it was shortly after that Matthew Zaki got with his counterpart up at Duluth, and she shared all of her files with us. You'll be trying to do both designs, they'll just get into that long process with the railroad. I mean, if you want to see a crossing in the near term,
Yes.
put the crossings.
This isn't an agenda item. I'm not comfortable really giving direction for staff, but I think we can reach out.
I'll share the Duluth documents with you tomorrow.
I apologize.
I'm with Josh.
for this
I've been waiting
but-
10 years for this.
Right,
Let's do this.
and we have 3 crossings that desperately need pedestrian crossings. One of them, you can do with a can of paint. I could go do it tonight. 4 crossings. We have Holcomb Bridge, Audrey, and the one by the Brunswick,
Blackbird.
or the Broadstone.
Well,
The Broadstone one, you just need a can of paint. That's all you do. You just
Well, that's because the city manager
and
went
Park
back
Street.
and
In Park Street.
And Park Street.
yeah, on Park.
There's 4.
Yeah. So there's 4.
And
already has pedestrian.
But it's only one side.
But, yeah, but at least it has one side. I mean, Holcomb
That's
Bridge.
the only, yes, you're right, it's
Yeah.
the only one in the entire city.
Right.
So, but I think that what we had said was.
You would suggest that we design both?
Yeah.
What I'm suggesting is that from what I saw from Duluth, you will delay having anything if you do that process. Now, we can go ahead and get you the design for just doing the crossing today, and then start immediately on what it would look like to do the railroad crossing, but they're not going to look the same. The railroad crossing is a Z formation.
Well, I think Councilmember Hickson and the mayor would support me in saying that when there's an opportunity with the railroad, you take it. And so I would say that we take it and we get something in place, and then we can continue to work towards if we ever want to do quiet crossings. But we need to take that opportunity.
And that window could close tomorrow.
Yes, sir.
So we're good on what we did talk about 2 weeks ago, where nothing's changed.
Sounds like.
Well, wait a minute, I think you did. Yeah.
Sounds like.
I'm not agreeable to not change, to changing that. So, because I mean, we're talking about implementation with the railroad, with Norfolk Southern, and we're talking about designing something. They are not the same exact thing. Striking the iron where it's hot with railroad is one bucket. Designing is a second bucket. So which one are we talking about modifying here? Because the idea was we would design two things at the same time. We go to the same firm, design two things at the same time, and this council would decide which one we were going to go attack based on what the design we got came back. Is anybody unagreeable to
We do
deciding?
have some new information from that. I would suggest that we have some, at our next meeting, deal with this. It wasn't an agenda item, we don't need to talk about it.
Right.
2 weeks is not gonna delay this process, we can add it before.
Well, first of all, I'm going to be talking to Norfolk Southern tomorrow. And second, I will share all the documents we got from Duluth, which came shortly after your meeting 2 weeks ago, which just suggests you go through one process. Right now, I think we have a process that has, to some extent, already been agreed to. Right? They've shown willingness to let us do simple crossings. I would suggest
They were receptive to that.
Yes.
Wanted to see some numbers.
At the
wanted to
time we
see
had that
the
discussion.
design, and the same guy's still there.
City Hall parking?
There you go.
Let's,
Yes,
okay,
I
look,
think we're ready to move to the next.
we can have this an agenda item, give them formal direction.
So
We haven't given
you
them
want to
formal
move
direction.
this to the next public work session?
Yeah, Monday, I mean, if new information, he can get it out to us, maybe nothing changed, but we can do it Monday.
No, you're talking about 4 weeks from now.
No, we can do it Monday. We can add anything on the agenda at any time. We just had a meeting right before this where we added something to the agenda we never saw before.
Yeah, based
2
on
weeks.
this discussion, we can.
Yeah,
Yeah.
2 weeks.
2 weeks,
Okay.
yeah.
So you're talking in 2 weeks, have that information.
Yeah, and we can give him formal direction at that point and he could solidify how much delay it would cost us and what it would look like if we did what we agreed to previously, which was do 2 designs and then we pick. I don't think we know what the downside of doing 2 designs is. It could be nothing. If that's that's what we agreed to, let's move forward with that. But if there is a downside to,
I think the downside, it'll be a couple of years to have those 2 designs approved.
We're not asking for them to approve.
Because you have to work through the railroad to do it. We don't get to design it without them. And we have to pay for them to come to the meetings to participate.
okay, well, we could discuss that if we,
But, Andrew, I would just say, Councilmember Hickson, I would just say that the reason why I was so frustrated earlier was that a year ago, or a year and a half ago, we gave approval, not to this city manager, I don't think, but to Rudolph, to head forward with pedestrian crossings. This council gave approval.
it's a different council.
Well, the council gave approval, so that's why I'm so frustrated, is that I can understand where Councilmember Myers is coming from, but we had already approved this.
The dirt wasn't moving, and ideas change. I know you're frustrated. And trust me, no one's wanted a crosswalk more than anyone at Park Street, because that's out my front door right into downtown. But it's not an agenda item. Let's move forward, Mr. Mayor, please.
Yes. Okay. Let's go with your next item.
We need some crosswalks over the railroad so that we can get to City Hall parking. I'm teasing, Arlene. I'm teasing. That was a look of death. Okay. Speaking of old policies and old, we commissioned a parking study. When was it? 2018, 19. That had quite a few ideas in it. One of which was a parking deck at City Hall. If you pull it up in our agenda packet 61, page 61, you can see they have a structure there. It looks to be 3 to 4 stories with some additional retail frontage there, which is not a bad idea. The only problem is that is a very expensive. There's currently 60 spaces now. If we go to a Google Earth view of downtown of City Hall, there's currently 60 spaces. If we were to do what I'm suggesting, which is a drive-in from the Cotton Gin, drive-in from City Hall, so no connecting deck, where you actually lose some spaces in the connection point. That's 120 total spaces, $15,000 a space. That's almost $2 million for a drive-in, drive-out. Probably less because there's no rampage. But we didn't have design for this. This is literally the only thing the staff has in terms of something on this parcel. I'd like for the staff to find out what kind of cost we'd be looking at to have some formal design work here. What would it look like for us to, I think this is the lowest hanging fruit for us to really tackle because we already own all these parcels. And it would still allow for police officers to park here. In fact, we could do employee-only parking on the top or the bottom, however it works out. But if we do this, it really would. I mean, I feel like we can get this moving pretty quickly because we already own the land.
What about the police thing? I don't know how long it takes to build it, but hopefully
they'll be gone. Not gone, relocated.
Are you suggesting that staff go out and solicit bids? Is that what you're
If Zachy can do it in-house, or one of our on-call engineers,
We'll contract out for a parking garage design.
is it under 30,000? You could just use one for that much design, so you could bring us back an agenda.
Talking
item.
about major structure, yeah. But we can come back. A question, so what you're describing is more of this. This was a drive into the higher level, and then as the road goes downhill, drive into the lower level, further down Mitchell. So that's what you're proposing here.
There's an elevation change.
Yeah.
There's already a natural elevation change. It may not be enough, but if we were to build some sort of, there's an elevation change going this way from here down to here.
Sure.
So if there's drive-in parking from here, we own this parcel, the DDA markets it. If we were to add, they come in here, they can park here on ground level, and then up here would technically be grade level from here. So you would be driving through this current lot. So it would be 2, but it would not be it's structured, but it wouldn't be as.
So, question: when they came up with this, did they come up with a plan for interim parking while the structure is under construction?
Well, we own almost every parcel around there, Eric. I think you could probably.
Because we'll need to put the municipal.
There's 40 cars. You can have your police cars and your employees, and I know municipal court is the problem, but sometimes you have to break some eggs to make an omelet.
Yeah, I just wondered if they came up with any proposal for that.
And remember, we have about 20 cars, decommissioned police cars right there. So we're not going to move active police cars in. In any event, I'd like for us to explore. We obviously have a parking situation. We've talked about it quite a bit tonight. This is probably the easiest thing for us to implement in a rather short time. Anyone suggestions? Shoot this down as quick as possible.
I can't shoot it down. It adds parking. I think it's something we look at. What interests me a lot about it is the retail in front, and really an extension of downtown as we continue to activate downtown. As we have all these new homes that are.
And we could build it without that and add that later.
Well, we could, or you could let that finance it, or have a developer do that. Now, I don't know. What my thoughts are if we were to do it, that it's advantageous to me that you're gonna get the most use out of it by continually activating, using our current property, the Cotton Gin. It gives it a lot more reinforcement. You add those retail spaces, a lot more reinforcement to start to use that parking deck along with what we already have. You know, our ARB chair just gave a whole lot about a lot of stuff coming here. I just feel like if we're gonna do it, we should at least put the space there, square footage there for retail.
Oh, I have no problem
And
with
office
pads
space.
there. Of course, we've all learned the downside to putting pads somewhere. We also just funded art hall there, so there's, you know, we have brand new gardens they just put in there, right? So it is frustrating, but I guess it wouldn't cost too much more to have them do design work for the buildings there. We could even have William find out what kind of demand there is for buildings there for the retail.
Yeah.
To be fair, our parking study says no one will park there. But
That's what my thoughts are. I mean, if you were to listen to the parking study, yes. If you add retail,
we have retail. And
you add a couple restaurants there or retail there, I think at the
Or-
very least it'll get used by them.
Yeah, or even like you said, that's covered. That would be covered parking. We could have employees, well lit employee parking next to a police station. Have a lot of downtown merchants park down there and have the trolley.
Yeah.
Any kind of idea such as that is a winner for me.
Councilmember Bear.
Out of all the places for structured parking, this is where I think it makes the most sense, especially because what you said, where you could have no interconnectivity between the two, the two levels. The only thing that I would say is that there is on-street parking in front of Councilmember Meyer's house. There's on-street parking on North Beach Street. There's on-street parking in front of the Broadstone. Before we spent the kind of money that it takes to build this deck, it makes zero sense to me not to consider on-street parking on Thrasher Street in places.
Okay, on the backside of it, I don't have. But holistic approach is never a bad approach, especially when you're talking about, you know, $2 million at 3 years ago prices. Actually, one of your DDA members is the one that told me $15,000 space for a structure like this. But we need options. We don't have any options. We have people asking us nonstop for options. And the population that was here when we originally started talking about parking and building a new downtown back in 2001 can't, you know, my parents are a classic example. They can't walk downtown as well as they did when they moved in town. So we do have, just walking around isn't the obvious solution.
How would we pay for this deck?
I don't think we would. Somehow, we'd have to figure it out. But how do we pay for design work? That's good. It's not budgeted.
Well, we have some parking money that should be left in SPOS. I don't think with what you discussed earlier.
Enough to pay for a deck?
No, I said we'll have some money.
Oh, okay.
Yes, sir. So I think design is feasible, but William's still here?
He stepped outside for an hour.
So he's raised the question of the tax allocation district, and there's a clock running out at the end of December for us to get with the county, have 5 committee members appointed, and actually have a project under construction or under construction.
5 months. I'm not.
It's been in place since 20.
How much money's in there? There's hardly any money in there.
Well, it started to grow.
Well, that's because our tax digest has gone up quite a bit, right?
So 106,000 in revenue so far this year, 232,000 total over the last 4 years, which is when it apparently first got above the increment level.
It's not 2 million. But that was intended to be used for debt, for infrastructure. So it might be an eligible project to do a parking garage. The key is you'd be representing, and the county again gets 3 out of 5 votes on the committee that has to consider this under the IGA.
And the school's not in that tab.
School's not in the TAD.
That's the real one.
But what you have to see, you have to show is that this is going to generate economic growth within the city. As a justification for using the county's money and our money.
I believe that's the
That's
only reason we
easy.
consider it.
But that's
Yeah.
the mean, that's what a tax allocation district is. Councilmember Beckles, you asked about that a few months ago. Did we have one and why not? And we do, but we haven't done anything with it today.
Why?
Well, until very recently, there wasn't any money. There was hardly any money in it.
We
It's just
have
with
one
the-
that we dissolved also. Like a couple that we dissolved. Okay, Councilmember Hickson, where would you like?
Hey
for
man,
us
that's up to
go
the
with
council.
this?
That I would like for us to at least have some sort of for the city manager to find out exactly how much it would cost for us to do some sort of design like this. Then we could have a little bit clearer picture of what it will cost our residents to do it, and then we could be a little bit more transparent to the business owners that are constantly requesting this about what costs we'll be bearing and how we'll pay for it, and then we'll have at least a solution, because as we've talked about tonight, we don't have a long-term solution. We have kind of picking and choosing of smaller solutions.
I'd support staff or Eric going just to understand what the cost of a study would, what the cost of the design would be.
And just for clarification, do you want to start with 120 space, 2-story, and leave space? I mean, this was a combination of commercial and residential. Would you like us to try to design?
I would design
the
exactly
2-deck
that.
and leave this out for now? And leave the footprint?
I can't imagine. Yeah, leave the footprint. I can't imagine.
I mean, leave the space. So in effect,
Yeah.
you leave phase 2 is the non-deck component,
Yeah, I would design
which
within
might
that
be a
scope.
DDA project. for
Yeah, I would
example.
design within that scope.
Yeah, I mean, speaking with the from the DDA perspective, this would be a terrific project to partner with the city. So I mean, I think we should look at it both ways. One should be just we maximize parking on that space, and the other idea is what if there is some retail aspect to it, you know? But to me, you could very easily get the design costs on just maximize parking and what this drawing is.
Yeah, that's kind of where I was thinking is the design as presented here, but maximizing as an option as well is a good idea too.
So maximizing parking would put as many parking spaces there without regard to leaving space for future or residential or commercial. Option 2 would be more in line with what is there, so that we leave space.
That's fine. And I'm not sure residential needs to be
phases,
there.
maybe?
Yeah, I'm not.
I think it should be office, retail.
Okay.
Sorry, my apologies.
You have office, retail, and residential units. So are we talking 3 phases here?
No, it would be, if we broke it down to
Great.
phases.
Hey,
it
y'all,
would
that
be-
was also like a 5-story building.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
It would be phase 1 was build the parking deck. Phase 2 was develop out the front area.
Okay.
But
something.
yeah, but
Undefined.
But I don't think we're at the point right now where we're deciding whether or not it's going to be built in phases. We're just deciding how can we get an estimate on cost.
We have no clue.
Yeah, and
Design work could be
and
$200,000.
if it simplifies it, Eric, I probably would say the residential is.
I love the residential.
Yeah.
I mean, what I was thinking is that one option was take this footprint just for parking, 2 levels like this one. Option 2 is carve this out. We don't design this.
Right.
Because this is something that maybe the DDA works with the developer to come up with a proposal, but we have a footprint like this. I think I just screwed everything up. Well, don't look, you get nauseous.
Oh, it's way down.
Can you find the right page? I get out of the way.
But there was some nice other renderings, I think is what you're getting at.
Yeah.
So if you can keep going down so we see it, not bird's eye, but go down another page.
Yeah,
So here's where you see,
Boy, that would be a tight fit in there, y'all.
so what I was saying is, I mean, one option would be, and of course, we don't have to have all of this structure. That would be
That's like 4 levels.
elevators probably, but we could do this footprint with 2 levels and leave this pad available for future development.
I think that's the
And the design is more like this, where you can see that you can get to the higher level from higher up Mitchell and the lower level from lower down Mitchell. That's the design where you come in here versus you come in here.
Yep.
All right.
there's mine.
I can support that.
When I look at this, you can see, I mean, we have parking here that Caitlin, we can use some of the parking up here as, I'm concerned about where do we put everybody during construction, but we might be able to use the park and here as part of our parking and see if we can come up. I think the DDA has talked about whether to put temporary parking down here, so that might be something that is usable too. Daytime for staff, nighttime for Chuck and Pat.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Hickson, for bringing that to us. Certainly appreciate the suggestions.
Appreciate you letting me do it.
Looks like we got some good traction. I think that was the last agenda item for tonight before we go into exec. Did I miss?
No, I was gonna make a
Okay.
motion.
All right, good.
I'd like to make a motion to go into exec for real estate.
It's a motion to go into exec real estate. Any objection to moving that question?
No objections, I second.
In personnel.
And personnel? Personnel? We have a motion and a second by Councilmember Beckles. All in favor, let me know by raising your right hand, saying aye.
Aye.
Opposes? We need 2 more votes.
Aye.
All right, unanimous. Thank you. Thank you all for being here with us tonight. We certainly appreciate it.
Hello, how are you?
Yeah, absolutely, good to see y'all.
Take a break.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.